The advice and opinions expressed by Dr. Grant-Pichet and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism.
Doreen Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet.
Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen. Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod and I am here with the fabulous Dr. Doreen Grant-Pichet. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Nice to be here.
So thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
Here we had you virtually last week,
Virtually, right.
but fun to have you in person. It's fun either
nice to be
way,
here.
but I'm selfish and I like in person better. And we're going to be here with you for the next hour live. We are live right now. Today is Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. I like to give them that just so that they know for sure that we're live. And we are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. Our fabulous Traven will show that to you in just a second. And we will then, later on, this will be available as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I also want to make sure that everybody knows that now this is its own separate podcast.
Very
that
nice.
you can go on all the places where you get podcasts, Apple Podcasts,
Right.
iHeartRadio, all those different places, and you can now, not just Autism Live, you can search Ask Dr. Doreen. And we really want you to take advantage of that, and we want you to subscribe so that you won't miss a single new episode that comes out. I will tell you that we did a false thing last week where we just moved it entirely over there, and people were like, wait a second, why can't I find my podcast? So for a brief period of time, for about a month, we're going to release it both on Autism Live and on Ask Dr. Doreen while you guys get your tookuses over and subscribe on Ask Dr. because we don't want anybody to miss their information or be confused. But please go over and subscribe at Ask Dr. Doreen because there will be perks along the way, reasons why you will want to be a subscriber to those different podcasts.
That's right.
So make sure that you do that. I also have to remind you that you guys have been doing a lot of work on your website. You can go to AskDrDoreen.com or DoreenGrantPichet.com and find all kinds of amazing information. Marina has been doing a wonderful job getting great information over there, so you're definitely going to want to check that out. And if you want to write in a question ahead of time, like we're taking questions right now, you guys can write in right now on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook, and we both get to be able to see it in real time. But sometimes you have a longer question or that doesn't fit all in the chat, or you want us to be thinking about it, you want me to share it with Dr. Grant-Pichet. So if you go to AskDrDoreen.com, there is a contact button at the top of the page. If you click that, there's an opportunity for you to put in your name and your email and your question. And that's really important because in the past, if you wrote in ahead of time to us, we didn't have a way of getting back to you to ask you a question and say, hey, Dr. Grant-Pichet wants to know, before we answer this question, how are they sleeping? What's their poop look like? Whatever the question is, right? So you can do that very easily on that contact form. And the fabulous Marina that I just referenced, she is like a warrior, man. She runs a tight ship.
She's great. She's fantastic. And she actually was just letting me know that some of the sites that we just mentioned are frozen. So if you're having a hard time viewing this on, I don't know, if you're having a hard time viewing this, you won't hear me say this, but hopefully you'll switch around because I think it might be frozen on Instagram or YouTube or something.
Oh
but
my gosh.
Yeah, so maybe just move around. Like, we're on a lot of different places, and so it looks like it seems to be streaming on YouTube okay.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and I can see people are already joining us.
Yeah, people are on Facebook, so at least we're there.
And Facebook, it's good, and so yeah, let's, hopefully we can get you on here, and because we have an exciting show.
We absolutely do. In fact, we have a topic that we start every show with, and we'll discuss that and usually take our first question on that topic. and sometimes throughout the show, we have questions about it. But later on, we'll open it to whatever questions you guys have. And I do want to say hello to Autism Journey with Elijah, and to R said, I want to thank you all, for all you guys do and insight you've brought to me. Our daughter, who is 5, never was afraid of fireworks or noises bothering her until a few months ago. Is this normal? She started plugging her ears when she hears a blender as well. Do kids on the spectrum have extra sensitive hearing? And is it just discomforting for them, or does it physically pain them? I kind of want to hold that question, and we'll get to it a little bit later because I want to get to the topic. I do want to say that yesterday we did a whole show on how to avoid sensory meltdowns in preparation for the 4th of July. You might want to check that out. That was on Autism Live.
Yeah.
But can we hold that question for just a minute?
Absolutely,
Okay,
no
so
problem.
because our topic today, everybody fasten seatbelts, right? Our topic today is the controversy around ABA. For those of you who are like, I don't even know what ABA is Applied Behavior Analysis, and we'll ask Dr. Grant-Pichet to weigh in. But there is a great deal of controversy. Our starter question is, what do you think about how ABA has changed over the last decade and the anti-ABA articles that seem to be coming out more?
Oh my God, I have so much to say about this. It's
Right.
such
Where do
a
we
sensitive
start?
topic.
Yeah.
So ABA is, as Shannon said, it's applied behavior analysis. It used to be called operant conditioning or behavior modification, and it is a subsection of psychological treatment. Like, it's a behavioral form of therapy. CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, is a slightly different form, and an ABA, I'm not a big fan of, honestly, applied behavior analysis, but as a title, because it's not analysis, it's treatment. But anyway, it's kind of the name that people came up with to replace behavior modification, because behavior modification didn't sound politically correct enough. But what it is the modification of behavior. That's exactly what it is. And what that means is teaching a child through various behavioral ways, which I'll talk about, or teaching an individual, anyone, to change their behavior, to modify their behavior. Now, I just want to stop there for a minute and talk about how many different things in our lives teach us to modify our behaviors. For example, and we're now talking about typically developing people, forget about autism or any other disorder, right? Just talk about natural development. When you are a baby and you want something, you cry. By crying, someone figures out what you want, whether it is that you want a change of diaper, you want food, you want comfort, whatever it is you want, and you get it. And then the crying stops, right? That's how human behavior is. Human behavior is whatever is our easiest form of communication, we communicate it, and until it finds some sort of solution, right? Someone takes care of it, and then that behavior changes. So that is the whole premise of ABA. Now, obviously with normal development, when you become 1, you cry, or 2 even, you cry, and what does the parent say? Use your words. That's the very first thing a parent will say. Use your words, and then the child will calm down, or try to calm themselves down, and will say, I want the candy, or I want juice, or whatever it is, or I don't want to do that, I want my toy, whatever they can communicate. And then we will explain to them and give them that object, because now they use their words nicely, and then that behavior increases. And the child realizes that, oh, crying doesn't work anymore. I am no longer a baby, and I can't cry to communicate. Now I need to use my words to communicate, and that's how they begin to use their words. Now they get a little bit older, they go to school, and the teacher asks a question, and the child uses their words and blurts out an answer. And the teacher says, if you want to use your words, put your hand up first. That's a new behavior. Now we learn, when I'm in school, if I want to communicate something, it's not enough just to respond. I have to do this first, wait for the teacher to call my name, and then I respond. So throughout life, and I just took you to first grade, right? So now just imagine, like, how do you communicate by the time you're 25 years old? You learn more in middle school, you learn more in high school, you learn more in college, you learn more at your job, you learn more from your first relationship, you learn more from your siblings. You're constantly learning how to change your behavior. And these things that you learn are things that help you do well in society. And for example, if in the classroom you decided to continue shouting out the answer, you'd get in trouble.
Yeah.
You'd just get in trouble. If you continued to fight with your siblings for an object, you'd be punished by your parents somehow, right? If you continued to grab toys that you want at the store, you'd get in trouble for that. When you are older and, let's say, going to college, and you continue to stay asleep in the morning, you'd get in trouble. So all of these things in life teach us what's okay and what's not okay for this society, period. And as we know, of course, there are, like, families that are somewhat dysfunctional, and you learn those dysfunctional rules, right? Or families that are, just culturally different, and you learn those rules. But there's rules. You learn the rules of your subsystem of the world, okay? Your family, your school, your environment, your town, the people around you, etc. And that is exactly what ABA does for a child or an adult with autism. At some point, due to the disability that they were experiencing, they didn't learn those rules of society, whether it was because they tantrumed and people got scared and worried because they had a title, a label called autism, and people thought, like, should I give in? What should I do? My child might be in pain. My child might be struggling. I should just help them. I should take care of them. Or it was because we as parents feel guilty when our kids are sad and crying, so we give in for that. Or it's because we're just tired as parents. For whatever reason, or a child is in special ed and they get a different kind of attention than in regular ed, or whatever the reason is, our kids don't learn the same rules. They learn different rules. And now someone with ABA comes in and says, oh, I'm going to teach him the same rules as society. I'm going to teach him he can't hit when he wants something. He can't cry when he wants something. He can't run away. He has to use his words, and he has to do it appropriately in different environments. And how am I going to teach him? The way I'm going to teach him is when he does that old behavior, like crying, hitting, biting, running away, the stuff that's not okay in this society, when he does that, I'll make sure that it doesn't work anymore. I'll make sure that it's not effective. It's not going to get him what he wanted.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm going to teach him a more effective way. The way that we usually communicate, which is using our words, or if he physically can't, using a picture exchange system or typing. Some other way that is okay from a society perspective, that is adaptive, that is not causing other people to freak out and get scared and all that sort of something that's acceptable in our society. I'm going to teach him that. And when he does that, I'll give him what he wants. That's what ABA is.
Yeah.
ABA has to do with teaching individuals how to communicate and how to interact in society in a way that is acceptable and in a way that helps them move forward and thrive. That's, in a nutshell, what ABA is. Now, can it be done in a poor manner? Absolutely, 100%. Everything can be done incorrectly, and then obviously it won't have the same kind of effect. Like, in other words, let's say instead of ignoring a challenging behavior, which is what you do in ABA, and it's called extinction, an individual who's teaching the child could become aggressive with the child and could say, I'm not going to just ignore you, I'm going to be punitive. That's not part of ABA. ABA doesn't use punishment. It did years and years ago, but it doesn't. For many, many years, nobody uses punishment. Okay. So, or for instance, there's a million different things that could go wrong, but the theory and the practice of good ABA is simply, I'm not going to accept behaviors that are challenging and unacceptable. I'm going to accept and reward behaviors that are positive, socially acceptable, adaptive, things that are going to help the individual move forward. And those are going to be very different for different people depending on the severity, their age. For a 2-year-old, I'm going to try and teach that 2-year-old all sorts of communication. For a 20-year-old, I'm going to really start by teaching that individual safety skills, and then maybe something after I feel like he's safe, then communication skills, then so on and so forth. So for each individual, ABA selects what is the most important thing that's going to help them thrive, and then that's what you teach. Now, recently, I had someone on a social media site write to me something about, I hope that Dr. Grant-Pichet now will stop talking about autism recovery, because recovery is only teaching people with autism to mask their true identities. And I was kind of taken aback by that because, first of all, I've been talking about recovery from autism for my entire career, for like over 45 years, and I'll continue talking about it because I don't see recovery as a bad thing. I see it as a very positive thing. It doesn't happen for everyone. It's a minority of individuals who are diagnosed with autism who actually get to the point where they lose the symptoms that produced the diagnosis to begin with. And as a clinician who was trained in diagnosis, that's what I mean when I say recovery. Now, if I have, I don't know, any other type of disorder, if I have anxiety, there are certain types of symptoms that I go to my doctor and I tell them, this is how I feel, this is how I feel, and the doctor says, oh, you have generalized anxiety disorder, or you have whatever, attention deficit hyperactivity, whatever it is, I get a diagnosis based on a series of symptoms. If those symptoms aren't there anymore, the next person I see can't give me that diagnosis. That means I have recovered from those symptoms. I don't care about is it cure, is it recovery, do people have those? That's not at all what I'm talking about, and people can feel differently about it. But what I'm talking about is once you no longer have the symptoms, you no longer qualify for that diagnosis. You may have other issues, we all do. You might have different things going on, but you don't qualify for the diagnosis of autism, period. Now, the other thing I want to say about it is about this word masking our true identities. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of an interesting thing, because if you think about it, we all mask some aspect of who we are. We all do, right? I mean, like, you see me, sitting here in public, and I try very hard to dress professionally and, fix my hair and put on some makeup and come and do this show. And if I'm doing like other meetings where I will see people, I have a particular mask or persona. If you see me at like 9 o'clock at night, I'm in my robe at home, don't care what my hair looks like, sitting there eating while I'm working or TV or whatever. I'm a totally different mask. It's a very different mask, right? If you see me talking professionally to an audience, I'm one type of person. You see me talking to my kids or my husband or my mom or something, I'm a different person. So we all mask some aspect of who we are, right? And we present to society that version of us that is acceptable. If I came here sitting in my robe, all of you guys would think, what on earth is up with her? Like, what's going on? Why is she doing that? Is that called masking, or is that called learning the rules of society? So that's kind of where I sit with this whole controversy about ABA, because all ABA does is it teaches people to adhere to the rules of society so that they can join society and they can thrive in this society. And that's really all it is. I mean, that's why I just don't understand why there's so much controversy.
Well, and I love the way you look at it because you look at it like a clinician.
Yeah.
And it's very, concise and it's elegant how you look at it. I'm a parent, I'm not a scientist, and I'm not a clinician. And so when I first heard about ABA, and of course, when I first heard about it, I was told, oh, don't do that. It'll turn your child into a robot. And I wouldn't talk about ABA for 6 months, and I lost those 6 months, and I'm sorry that I lost those 6 months. I still kick myself about those 6 months. But when I began to see it, and it got introduced to our family, and I always think about my mother's reaction to it, because it looks weird. It does look weird, and I think every single parent on the planet has a moment where we think, whether your child has autism or not, you have a moment where you think, I just want the world to accept and love my child the way they are, right? And I think it can get very confusing because people put their thoughts on what it is teaching your child, and we're not used to seeing our child being taught in this very specific way, right?
Yep.
But I'm a former teacher, so for me, I'm gonna look at it from a teaching perspective. And for me, I refer to ABA as the autism miracle in my living room. I still think of it that way, and I get very emotional about it. Because there was a period of time when a teacher, was frustrated and looked at my child and thought, is he incapable of learning?
Yeah.
Like that thought crossed my mind. And when you guys came in and started working with him, it leveled me because you were able to teach him.
Yeah.
And I needed to learn how you were doing it. And that was hard for me. It was humbling for me that I could walk in and teach anybody else's child, but I couldn't teach my own. So I needed to learn what you learned, and I had to be willing to put myself in that vulnerable place of saying, I don't know, show me. Right?
Yeah.
But I began to realize that, somebody wrote in and said, I would say that the symptoms of autism mask the personality of the child and prevent them from living how they want to, not masking autism. I didn't think of it as him needing to learn the rules of society. I thought of it as him learning skills so that he could choose which rules he wanted to adhere to.
That's a good way to put it,
and
too.
which ones he didn't want to adhere to, and that he would be able to find his path. I always thought of it that all of the kids are out on a track, like a field and track.
Yep.
And some of them have more hurdles to cross than others to get the direction that they want to go to. And as a parent, I was like, what can I put in his backpack to help him to get over the hurdles or to move some of them out of the way? And listen, there was a day when it was actually my 50th birthday where we went to a friend's house, and because they were doing a birthday celebration for me, and my child went into the room where the other children were, and he wanted to play with them on the computers, and he wanted to connect. And he had certain skills in place, but he couldn't quite get it all the way there. And the evening ended with him laying face down in the foyer of their house, crying and saying, what do I have to do to get them to play with me?
Yeah.
And I, and there were years when he didn't have the words to say that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And he had been trying to connect with these kids, and he just couldn't get them to. And the very next day, we assembled the team and said, okay, what do we need to work on? What skill does he need to have to be able to overcome whatever's going on with them, which I would have liked to have knocked their heads together, right? And said, could you just be nice?
Yeah.
Could you just freaking turn around and pay attention to him and play with him and connect? How hard would that be for you? I hear you, parents who are like, why can't society level up to where our kids are? I get that. I understand what you're saying. But on the other hand, what do? Just sit back and wait for them to accept our kids? I wanted to pack my kids' backpack with skills.
Oh, I got so much to talk about here.
Right?
I love you.
Right,
That's
but
great.
I wanted him to, and then he could make the choice.
Yes.
I love that my mother always said, if you decide not to clean your house, that's fine, but I'm going to teach you how to clean your house.
Yes.
Then you decide if you want to do it or not. Oh my gosh, I got goosebumps thinking about how all in we went so that he could learn as much as he wants. And now he applies it in his life.
Yeah.
And he is, he is exactly who he is.
Yep.
and no apologies, my God. And his brain works so differently than mine, and I'm thrilled about that. I wish
Yeah.
my brain worked like his
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Because it's different. He
Oh, it's
sees the
very
world in a
different.
different way than I do, and it's better.
But let me tell you, Shannon,
Yeah.
you and I work differently too.
Yes, absolutely.
Every individual
I wish my brain
works
worked like
different.
yours
No.
too. you know?
Everybody has a different way they
Yes.
process the world. And I two important
You go.
things you said. That was beautiful. I'm so glad to have heard that side. But here's how I bring it together.
Yeah.
So at every different level, children have a different obstacle that we're trying to teach them. When it's brand new, when they're just beginning, the main thing that we're trying to teach them is just observe and enter the world with the rest of us.
Yeah.
Because you guys know, you've seen kids who are completely in their own world, totally isolated, not even interested. They've learned how they occupy themselves with self-stimulatory type stuff or with an iPad or whatever, and you can barely keep them involved in this world for long enough. That's phase one. And we do a million different lessons to get them to be like, oh, I'm actually going to stay present now for a while. Okay. Once they're present for a while, the next step becomes what you just said, which is, how do I engage with other people, right? And that is the second step of joining society. This is all I mean. This is about joining society. Then once you've learned how to engage, the third step is, how do I thrive in this society? Now that I'm involved and I'm engaging with all the people, how do I thrive? That thrive portion is their choice. Just like any other child or adult or teenager or whatever, it's our choice. Do I want to work hard? Do I want to go to college? Do I want to learn a trade? Do I want to wake up every morning? Do I want to, abuse my family? Like, these are choices, right?
Yeah.
And we make choices that help us do better, or we make choices sometimes that help us fail, one or the other. But before you can make those choices, you have to learn to pay attention and engage. Okay, so that's one thing I wanted to say, which is super important. Now, the other thing I want to say is about society as a whole. Why can't society adjust to our kids? And I'll tell you why. Because our kids are not the only ones that are different. There are lots of other people who are different in other ways. And society, the word society is that place, that union that allows all different people to live together. Okay, so if you have autism, you're going to have to fit into this place. If you have depression, you're going to have to fit into this place. If you have alcohol dependence, you're going to have to fit into this place. This is the place where we all have to fit in, because it's impossible for this place, society, to meet all the needs of someone with autism, someone with anxiety, someone with depression, someone with alcohol dependence. It's just not possible. Because if I try to meet the needs of someone with depression, I'm making it worse for someone with anxiety. If I try to meet the needs of someone with autism, I'm making it worse for someone with ADHD. That's why it is one set of rules. So, and we all have to live here. That's the only thing. So of course I would like it, and there are certain things, by the way, that have changed, which are awesome, because they don't make it worse for anyone else. Like, for example, I'll give you a great example of this. I love that we now have sensory sensitive movies.
Yeah.
Right? You go to movie theaters and they will lower the lights, lower the sound. But wait a minute, they only do it one day a week. Why do they do it one day a week? Because 6 days a week, they're catering to everyone else.
Right.
Okay? Let's not forget, there's everyone else.
Right.
So it's great that they're catering to the autistic population one day a week. I love that. I wish I'm trying to get that to happen in Saudi Arabia and other parts of the world, which is awesome. I think the more we do that, the better, right? We can do certain things, but we also have to remember that the other people in the world also have rights.
Yes.
And that's how it has to be, is that it all has to come together.
And as you pointed out, things do change.
Things have changed
and look at how much
drastically.
things have changed in COVID, and some of that has been in favor of our kids
That's
on
right.
the spectrum.
That's
that
also
things
very
are more
true.
online. And,
Very true.
And, you know, I think our society evolves when it has to. And,
Yes.
and if 1 in 36,
yeah, oh
you
my
know,
gosh.
society is going to evolve. It's just not going to evolve fast enough for our kids to be able to do what we want them to do.
Yeah.
And I want to say one more thing about the masking. You said we all mask. I think it's a very fine line between teaching someone a skill and asking them to mask. And I think it's a nuance that's important to discuss. I am someone who is painfully shy. No one knows that anymore. No one, like everybody who knows me is like, I can't imagine. I am
yeah.
painfully shy. Painfully shy. But because of that, like to the point where there were like, I didn't have selective mutism, right? But there were times when I would go into situations and I would refuse to speak as a child
Yeah.
and as a teen.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
I was and I would get so locked up in it. But there were things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so my mother shoved me into theater classes and was like, she's so dramatic at home, but I
is
can't get her
awesome.
to speak in person. So I learned skills that even when you're feeling anxiety,
there you go.
that you can still speak. And I learned, and I was reinforced for walking up to people and talking to people that I didn't
Amazing.
know.
Amazing.
Right? And a few years ago, I was doing a presentation and I was so nervous about it. And do you remember our lovely Amy Zhang?
Of course.
Afterwards, one of the most wonderful people on the face of the planet, you
Absolutely.
guys. Heart of solid gold. And afterwards, she came up to me and she said, I wish I could do that. What you, like that you just got up and did this presentation. And she said, I wish I could do that. I wish I had your confidence. And I said, oh my goodness, this is all smoke and mirrors, my love. This is a skill that I learned so that I could do the thing I wanted to. Am I masking? 100%.
Yeah.
But it's a skill that I've learned. Otherwise, I couldn't sit here with you.
Totally, Shannon.
And eventually, the more you do the skill, the more comfortable it becomes, and the more, it's that by Georgia I think she's got. It becomes yours.
It becomes yours, and that becomes your new self.
Yes. It's a part of who I am now. But it was because it was something that I wanted to do. You can't force a person to mask because, if it's not something that is useful to them.
Absolutely, I 100% agree with you. And it's useful, you being a mature, let's say, adult, at some point realized, oh, I need to learn this skill because it's going to help me. It's going to be very useful to me in this kind of situation where I want to talk publicly or I want to be in a group of people. But when you're a child, you don't, those choices, if we allowed every child to choose everything, no child would wake up and go to school.
Right.
Like, who wants to go to school?
Yeah.
Once you start going and you start realizing, oh, there's fun aspects to this, and I make my parents proud, and everybody, and my friends are there, and all this sort of stuff, then you realize, oh, this is actually good. So we learn new behaviors, and they become part of us.
Yes.
So initially, there isn't a lot of choice. Initially, it's just about, I'm sorry, sweetie, but you have to wake up. We can't sleep until noon every day. That's just a rule.
But you give them other reinforcers until you get to the point where they can make the choice.
Of course, I'm totally with you, yes.
Well, I mean,
I love that, yeah.
You know that I totally get what you're saying, and like I said, it's elegant. I just have a different filter.
No, totally. But see, like you said also, Shannon, like you've had a lot of times when your son was growing up, where like you talked about, like he would have a full-on tantrum, let's say in the supermarket or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
turned over a shopping cart once.
There you go.
Almost injured. There was a couple next to us with a baby, and he turned over the shopping cart, and like they were like, he almost hurt our child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that big of a meltdown in a grocery store.
Right. And so if you had not done the ABA that taught him that kind of behavior is not okay as a form of communication, you can't do that. No matter how frustrated you are, you can't do that. That's a rule.
Yeah.
If you hadn't done that, where would he be in society?
I can't even.
That's my
I
point.
can't even. Like, the shiver goes up my spine.
Yeah.
If I had listened to the people who were like, don't do this, it'll turn him
He has
into a
autism.
robot.
Let him be.
And if you do this, he'll, it'll be cruel to him and it'll turn him into
Yeah.
a robot, and the world should just accept him the way he is. I saw the look of horror on those parents. They weren't going to accept him.
Yeah.
Turning over a shopping cart.
Right.
And listen, he was strong. I was trying to get him to not do it. It wasn't like I was,
Yeah.
in another world.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, lots of people have written in lots of different things. 98 said, as an ex-card employee, seeing you both again talk about autism makes me feel like I'm back in a weekly TL meeting. Haha. I'm glad that you're here with us. Autism Journey with Elijah says, we're still looking for ABA therapy, a good one, in fact. Our insurance doesn't cover many options when it comes to ABA. Let's talk about that. And we will be switching insurance at the end of the year. Anyhow, choosing an ABA therapist. What should we look for in a good therapist for our son? And how do we know what is a good fit and will avoid meltdowns? Okay, now we're going to talk about that. Is it inevitable? My son attaches extremely easy, and switching therapists several times, he has issues adjusting if changing posts keeps happening. I think there's a lot of turnover with therapists, so
Yes.
a lot there to talk about. Where do I start?
There's like 5 different things in
Yes.
that one paragraph to talk about.
Yes.
First of all, and I think you're in California.
No.
We're
Arizona.
You're in Arizona, and there's really good coverage for Arizona
Yes,
in
there is.
Arizona, and there's actually a few really good organizations in Arizona.
I just got turned on to a new school in Arizona
Okay,
too.
there you
so
go.
There we are. Yeah.
So reach out to us and let's talk. You should have coverage. Medicaid covers it, so it's not even about your insurance. You have coverage in Arizona.
Yeah.
And you should have good therapy happening for Elijah right now. So
Yeah.
period. That's that. And I will agree that the older our kids get, the harder it becomes to get ABA, because that's a bad thing that has happened, where a lot of providers of ABA have come to the realization that insurance companies give them a harder and harder time with funding as the child is older than 8. The older the child gets, it becomes harder to get any kind of authorization for therapy, although the law says you can have ABA no matter what age you are. So a lot of providers, by choice, have decided not to fight, and they've decided to just provide services for very young children. That is not okay, because our kids who get older also need this type of intervention. So you definitely have access. We need to figure out how to help you to get that access. Choosing a good ABA therapist, there's like 1,000 things I can say about that, because every team has to have different qualifications. It's not, if I wanted to try to like reduce this down to a quick answer, I'd say you want people who see your child as an individual. So they're not trying to do what they did with the last child. Like, every child is different, and you want to make sure that your team, and by the way, folks, like, there's 2 sets of clinicians. One is the behavior technicians. So that's the army of individuals who actually works directly with your child. And then there's a board certified behavior analyst, or master's level or doctoral level person, who is the supervisor. And that supervisor does some direct work with your child, but their main job is to write out the overall program for your child, and their main job is to make sure those behavior technicians are doing a good job. So, and they all follow the same procedures and the same protocols and training and all that, but the person at the top is designing the program and helping others implement it. The people on the team are the implementers. They're both important for different reasons. That BCBA, who's the supervisor, needs to really listen to you, really understand what you want for your child, really discuss with you what they think is important for your child, so that you feel like you're part of the team, and so that you and that person can come to a conclusion as to what your goals are for the next month, the next 6 months, next year, your child's life. All of that has to be in discussion with your BCBA. The BCBA has to be very good at training others, because their point is they have to be very dependable. They have to be able to be a good leader, because you have, anywhere between 2 to 5, 6 people on your team, and they have to be able to keep the team cohesive, consistent, doing the same things, happy with each other, working well together. All of that is very, very important. Everyone needs to know the principles of ABA. They all need to know how to react and be consistent, exactly the same if your child has a tantrum or lashes out or something. Consistency is one of the most important things. They all have to follow a decent curriculum. Different people have different curricula. I don't like it when I go in and I observe ABA teams and all they're working on is teaching the child to do his alphabet. That's not enough for ABA. It's part of what we teach, but it's not the only thing, because they have to have a broad agenda. So we're teaching things that are language, social behaviors, cognitive behaviors like problem solving, perspective taking. We're teaching things that are like executive functioning skills, so making decisions about choices, knowing how to plan something, all of those types of skills, motor, adaptive skills like daily living, and academic. I mean, there's a huge array of things that we teach in ABA, and you just want to make sure that if you have the expertise of a behavioral person, you're hitting all the right content, right? You don't want to be focused on just teaching someone ABCs when really what they need to learn is how to vocalize their needs instead of hitting someone, right? As an example. So those are some examples. There's a lot more. I mean, ABA therapists need to be open to whatever else you're doing. If it's medical, you have to make sure that they're paying attention to your child's other needs. Like, is your child sleeping enough? Is your child having a reaction to something in their diet? If you have the child on some form of diet, they have to be respectful of that. So, there's a lot of stuff that goes into what produces a good ABA team. There was one other, then the biggest part is, how do we avoid meltdowns? You're not going to avoid them. You're just not going to avoid them, because the point where let's say a child has figured out, and our kids are smart, so let's say a child has realized that every time I don't want to go to school, I will hit and have a full meltdown here. And then as parents have now realized, oh my God, I better not push this. If he doesn't want to go to school, I really want to avoid that massive tantrum in the morning, so I'm just not going to force him. Then someone comes along, an ABA therapist, and says, no, we have to take him to school. It is just what it is. We have to do this. We're going to do it in transitional phases. We're going to do it gradually. We're going to heavily reward him. But if he has a meltdown, we're just going to work through it. We're going to ignore it. We're going to put it on extinction, because that's not a good way to communicate. The meltdown's going to happen. It's going to happen, because that's what your child has learned is effective. It'll take a little while before your child learns the meltdowns don't matter. And then that they will stop. And then your child will start to communicate in more acceptable ways. So don't think about how do I avoid the meltdown. If you have a good team, don't worry, because there will be meltdowns for 5 or 6 months, and then there won't be anymore.
Yeah, and I think a good team is going to help you to realize, because we panic when some degree of emotional when a meltdown.
It's so emotional when a child has a tantrum. It's so hard.
And what your good ABA team will teach you is not to panic, and how to stay productive.
Correct.
And how to, they're allowed to have their feelings. You're just not going to reward it.
Exactly.
Is all. So it's a really fine thing. But I would say to you too, that to the last part about the, changing therapists, I'm going to evoke Peter Farrig for a second.
Yes.
That, I hope in all of your lives you have somebody who walks into your lives that gets you and gets your kid and can help your kid learn so much, and that you have that happen. Because we certainly did. We had Peter Farrig, and once he came in, and it was like the lights came on, and I was just so filled with hope that I never wanted to let Peter go anywhere else.
Yeah.
I wanted him to move into our little
Yes.
2-bedroom condo. And I was like, we don't need anybody else. Please stop sending other people. Just send Peter, because Peter gets me. He gets my kid. My kid learns.
Yep.
Everything's moving along well. Let's just do this. Don't mess with that. And Peter was the one who said to me, oh, but no, that's not how this works. He said, because we're not preparing your son to go out into the world with me with him.
Yes.
That's not what we're preparing
Yes.
him for. We're preparing him for the world. And someday, and this is exactly what he said to me, someday he's going to go to 5th grade, and the 5th grade science teacher is going to call in sick. And the person they're going to send is a substitute who does not know your son, does not know the ABA, does not know about autism, doesn't really even know about science,
Yep.
and we're preparing for him to be successful on that day.
Yeah.
Which means that a whole lot of people are going to have to come through here, and they are all of them are going to be more experienced than that science teacher on that day.
Yeah.
Some of them are going to have more experience than others, but all of them are going to be critical to helping him to get to the point where he can have the world. And he would say to me, we're preparing him for the world, not to stay at home with me.
Yeah.
And so, yes, of course, your son attaches himself to somebody, and that's wonderful. And those people, you're going to have to make your peace with. Those people are going to come in and out of your lives.
Right.
And you're going to love them, and then they're going to leave. And it's going to happen, and it's going to be emotional. Make your peace with it now, and welcome them for the season that they're
Yes,
there.
yes.
And wish them well as they go, and say wonderful things about them when they leave.
Yes.
But that is going to happen, and it is for the good of your child.
Absolutely. Very well said. Yeah. It's called generalization, and
Well,
it's
there
really
we go.
important. Yeah.
I do want to acknowledge Anna is with us, and Anna said, I had the same thought about my son being able to learn. I've seen my son grow so much since we started ABA. We have learned how to communicate and how to listen to him his way. He's learning that his voice matters
Great.
via oral or PECs.
Great.
I'm very sad we missed 2 years via COVID, but I want my son to be able to function without me.
Fantastic.
Yes, amen.
Fantastic.
I want to say hello to Elizabeth. R said, and we're going to get to your question at the beginning of the show that came. R said, no child wants to be not to be able to be heard and communicate. I think that that's absolutely true. Okay. Blue Eyes wants to know what we think of Christina Adams and her book with camel milk. I'm a huge fan of Christina Adams. I want to really encourage you not only to read the camel book, but read her first book called A Real Boy, because it was my Bible. It's how I found my way to this woman.
So many people love that book. It's a very, very well written. Christina is very eloquent, by the
Yes.
way, and she has really some very good books, and I do encourage you to read them.
Yes, absolutely. I want to get to the question that we had at the beginning of the show that I said, let's put a pin in that for a second. R wanted to know about the sensory overload, the things, their 5-year-old was afraid of fireworks or noises bothering her, was not afraid of them until a few months ago. Is this normal? She started plugging her ears when she hears the blender as well.
Yep.
Do kids on the spectrum have extra sensitive hearing, and is this just discomforting for them, or does it physically pain them?
You know, I don't know if it causes, what level of discomfort it causes. It definitely does cause some discomfort, but think of it in this way. Like I've had, oh my gosh, so many kids over the years. I go back into my youth, right? When I was a young therapist in my early teens. I mean, I started doing therapy when I was 16. So I remember incredible things with kids where, like, you know, they would stop what they were doing and run to the window, this little boy, and just sit at the window until the garbage truck came and passed. And that was something that I don't know if it was causing him pain or just interest, but he could hear it a minute before the rest of us. Like, nobody knew, but after a while we figured out it's the garbage truck, you know, and he loves hearing that. So, and then over the years, I mean, oh my gosh, not only have I seen things like that 1,000 times, but some of my very, very high functioning or recovered individuals have actually said to me that other sounds were much, much, much louder than the sound of language, which is amazing. Because if you think about it, we focus on certain things that are, I guess, not we have sounds that we consider to be background noise and other sounds that we consider to be foreground things to pay attention to. And in like typical development, language is one of the things that is in the foreground. It's supposed to be paid attention to, right? But with our kids, like a couple of my kids told me, like it was really hard. It was background noise for them. And they had to train themselves to not pay attention to those sounds that were louder and more acute, I guess, and to pay attention to what they considered to be background noise, which was language.
Yeah.
And that's how they started to really learn and pick up. But they had to focus on it. And so that's kind of interesting. Like as I get older, I realized, and this happened last night actually, I was telling my husband, because we were watching something on TV, and when you're younger, you're pretty good at multitasking in the sense that you can talk to someone and actually somewhat hear what's going on. At my age, you cannot do that. Let me just say. And like, I either have to stop this or not listen, like one or the other. I can't do both. And that's just the way it is. When my kids are around, they all do that, right? And there's a third stimulus too. They're like this, they're listening to that, talking. It's insane. I don't know how they do it. So to some extent, that's, I think, what kids with autism or individuals with autism also experience, is just overload of input of sensory stuff. And they have to learn over time which ones are the important ones and which ones they have to put in the background. Clearly, certain things are disturbing to them, like lights in particular. Certain lights, I have seen children who are just like this, so I know it's disturbing to them. But more than, I mean, rather than think of it as pain, I think I would say it's just overwhelming, because they have, there's no filter. They don't, I think for some children, there's just too many things coming at them in a very raw form. Imagine if you, let's say, had loudspeakers on, right? So sounds might be louder. The lights are more intense, things like that. And there's just so many of them, sounds that we are very good at just putting in the background. I think they have a hard time with that. And so there's just too much coming in.
Yeah.
But they learn. They overcome, most children overcome that. And by the way, before they overcome that, you should help them. So when you're in environments that are going to be very noisy, you can give your child a sound, headphones that are reduce the sound, or you can give them glasses, sunglasses, tinted glasses. You could teach them to go to calmer areas. I mean, there's a lot of things we can do to help our kids with that overwhelming sensory input.
And we gave you a list of 10 of them on yesterday's show.
Perfect,
so there you
perfect,
go. And
perfect.
it included glasses and headphones. We're not going to get to all of these questions, and I did promise, but I do want to say hi to Sarah and Huma. I did promise Marina that we would cover this question that came in on the website.
Oh.
What is your opinion on ABA versus PRT for early treatment? Is one better than the other?
So pivotal response training, PRT, is kind of included under the bigger umbrella of ABA. If you want to learn more about PRT, it's a little bit different in the sense that they try to teach skills that they feel are pivotal. And if you teach this particular skill that's pivotal, a whole bunch of other skills will follow with ease, is kind of their theory. I would recommend that you read the work of the Kegels, Bob Kegel, Koegel. He's written a lot of books. His wife, Lynn, also has written books on this subject. PRT generated from their work, and so, but it is a form of ABA, so you might want to look into that.
Absolutely. I do want to acknowledge that Elijah apparently loves to spend time alone, but will play with friends. But when the camera goes on and he goes live or is doing something with the camera, he comes out and becomes someone else. It's amazing to see him when he gets out of his shell.
Isn't
I
that
love that.
amazing? Yeah, it's amazing.
I just love that. Huma from Pakistan says, I've experienced with so many children to implement ABA that it really works, but would it be beneficial for adults with autism?
Oh,
spectrum?
absolutely, absolutely. And so it's very different when you're working with adults. I mean, if you actually, Huma, it's a very good question, because a lot of people think that ABA is not for adults. But the interesting thing is there are thousands more articles on peer-reviewed published articles on work with adults than there are with kids. And the work with adults is a little bit different. It's what we call focused. So you're not teaching a whole bunch of different skills. You're focusing on one skill at a time. So the skill might be, I'm teaching them a job. Or it might be, I am teaching them how to, an adaptive skill, like how to make a sandwich. Or whatever, I'm teaching a high-functioning adult how to do their resume so they can get a job, or how they can socialize in college. So it's usually one skill at a time, because adults typically have a lot of stuff going on. And so, but it's absolutely effective. ABA is effective on all of us. It happens in our daily lives. This happens all the time. You know, we go to work. You go to work so that you can get a paycheck, and that paycheck is it's a token in ABA language, because money is a token reinforcer, because with money you can buy other things that you actually want, right? So if you weren't getting paid, if you didn't make money from going to work, nobody would go to work. Like, that's just, so ABA is just a principle of human behavior.
There we go. And in fact, you know, I remember when we started ABA, I was told that 50% of ABA had nothing to do with autism. That they use it in businesses, corporations, Olympic athletes use ABA
absolutely
to get the best performance.
Absolutely
so
right.
there we go. I also want to acknowledge, Sarah says, we just changed our nanny thinking it would be a nightmare, right? But we were pleasantly surprised that the boys adjusted really well. Actually, it's better. New energy, new bond.
Oh, Sarah, I went through an exact same thing when my kids were young, where I had like the same tie that you had to Peter, where I was like, oh my God, if once this nanny is gone, I'm just done. Like, I cannot handle my kid. There's no way I can work and have the 3 kids and all this, and I need this person. And the truth is, she was spectacular, but then other spectacular people came after that too.
And you have to make room for that. There's somebody else who's really fabulous.
And they
I
teach
love
different
that you found
things.
that. Yeah, they come in and they do different things. I also wanted to acknowledge, there was one other thing with the discussion about Elijah. We've said this on the show, and we always get a big reaction when we say it. So many of you have written into us and said that you're on a waiting list, that you can't get in, you can't start ABA because you're on a waiting list, and your insurance, the place that your insurance sent you to, the waiting list is 2 years. Remember that you can go back to the insurance company and say to them this phrase: I need to start therapy. We've been on the waiting list. This is a denial of access to care. And then what the insurance company will do is that they will start a process of finding you another ABA provider. But if you don't ask for it and you don't use those words, they'll keep you on the waiting list. And it's not that they're trying to be mean. How would they know? Right? So make sure that you advocate for yourself. And sometimes what happens is that then you can get what they call a single case agreement. Because sometimes they'll say, well, which ABA provider would you like? We don't contract with them, but we'll put them in network on this single case agreement, and you can end up being with the ABA provider that you wanted all along, that wasn't in your network. Don't sit idly. Take the bull by the horns, as they say. Talk to your insurance company. Don't, if you have insurance coverage, don't allow the little pool that they gave you to stop you from getting ABA. Traven is reminding us that we're almost done. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to also just comment on that, because I think, you know, if an ABA provider has a wait list or you can't get in, that probably means that they're actually pretty good. You know, and if you're going to places where they don't have a wait list, then you might want to make sure that they're doing high quality ABA. So
that's a good point.
You know what I mean? So one of the first things I want to say to parents is, if you can make accommodations or alter your schedule, that'll be very helpful, because I can tell you that almost 100% of ABA providers have openings in the mornings, because all kids go to school. And in the mornings, most of these ABA clinics are just sitting empty. What happens is, at around 3 p.m. until about 6 or 7 or 8 p.m., depending on how late they're open, it becomes chaos. And that is the period of time where they're booked. They just don't have enough space. They don't have enough therapists. They don't have anyone who wants to work, anyone else. They can't fit more people into the 3 to 8 period. So can you somehow open your schedule either in the morning or on the weekend, because that is where you can get the benefit of starting earlier. And when I say morning, I know that obviously if you're in school, it becomes very hard to open mornings. But sometimes you have schools that provides 2 sessions. Like there are now schools where your child can actually be attending school in the afternoon as opposed to the morning. And or you should also evaluate, do I want to actually just have my child in school maybe 3 days and do ABA another 2 days? Things like that. So wherever you can accommodate and wherever you can change your child's schedule, particularly if your child's younger than school age, then do morning sessions, you'll get in right away.
There you go.
So those are some of the things. And
I love that. Thank you for that perspective. All right, we are out of time. I do want to say that next Tuesday, it's the 4th of July, so we will not be here, but we will be playing a best of episode.
Great.
In fact, we're going to be doing that throughout the weekend, showing you a lot of old episodes.
How is next Tuesday, 4th of July?
I know. Where does the time go? But so excited to be here with you guys, and I hope that you will, over the next couple of days, check out some, because we have a library of videos that are absolutely amazing. We're in our 13th year, so check out some of the wonderful stuff. But we will be back with Dr. Grant-Pichet the Tuesday afterwards.
Looking forward to it.
And we will be back here live the Wednesday, the day after, with, I think, a really interesting show. So until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.